These are the geography facts that change how a map works in real life. From parks and bridges to borders and mines, each one shows how place shapes outcome. In 2021, a Washington state park drew more visitors than Yosemite National Park. The park was Deception Pass, not a giant national icon. Deception Pass State Park covers 3,854 acres. It sits on 9 islands, mainly Whidbey and Fidalgo, on both sides of the pass. The key is the crossing. Deception Pass Bridge, finished in 1934, links the park's 2 sections over the waterway. That bridge concentrates access into one dramatic route. Drivers, walkers, and day trippers can reach the viewpoints quickly from nearby roads. So a park split across islands and a narrow pass becomes a regional stop, not just a map label. From above, the bridge, water, and forested edges pull the eye to one crossing. A restroom in a New York City park took 8.5 years to design. It was not just a building, it was a public space project inside a busy park, where every square of ground already had a job. The design had to fit a real site and city constraints, so the restroom was planned around the park instead of dropped into it. That made a tiny structure take a long design timeline. A small restroom became a land use puzzle about placement, access, and the shape of the park. When the restroom finally exists, it sits beside the path like a small solved problem, with the park still doing the larger work around it. A football stadium stands on land once disputed by the United States and Mexico. From the seats, it looks routine. The key is the ground beneath it. Borders are drawn on maps, but they also follow rivers, roads, and old survey lines. Here, a disputed frontier left a footprint in later development. The stadium rose on land whose boundary history was already settled into the map. So the building became a normal sports venue, but its location still points back to an older border question. The field sits where the line once mattered. From above, the stadium is just one structure among roads and lots. On the ground, the boundary history lingers under the turf and the concrete. A bridge over the Schuylkill River does not actually cross the river. The name makes you picture water under the span, but the route says otherwise. That happens when a bridge name follows the river landmark, while the road path follows a different line. On a map, those 2 lines can split apart. Road geometry can place a span beside the river, or over a related corridor, instead of over the water itself. The bridge still belongs to that crossing area, even when the river sits just to the side. For anyone reading the route, that creates a small map puzzle. The label points to the river, but the pavement may be aimed somewhere else. So the bridge, the river, and the road do not line up the way the name suggests. What looks simple from one angle becomes a crossing puzzle on the pavement below. A trail was built to share space with a rail corridor. At Glenford Dyke, that overlap was planned, not accidental. The place is the Glenford Dyke section of the Ashokan Rail Trail. It sits in a landscape where one route had to fit tightly beside another. The unusual part is the planning. The trail and rail corridor were designed to coexist, so the route had to work around existing infrastructure. That makes the corridor do 2 jobs at once. Rail movement and trail use share the same narrow landscape instead of separate strips of land. A trail, a rail line, and a dike all meet in one strip of ground. On foot, that feels like a path beside steel and water. Greenland's mining history began on one island, with coal pulled from Disko Island in 1782. This was not a wide mining region. It started at a specific place where the ground held coal. In 1782, that coal seam on Disko Island became the first extraction point in Greenland's mining story. The island's geography mattered because the resource was there, close enough to reach and remove. That dark seam on Disko Island became the opening chapter of Greenland mining, marked by coal, rock, and a shoreline cut. 17 stone arches stretch across Shuanglong Bridge in Yunnan. In one crossing, the scale already looks monumental. This bridge is considered Yunnan's largest ancient stone bridge. It is also described as its most artistically valuable. The answer is in the arches and the stone. 17 spans demand both engineering and patient masonry. That makes the crossing more than infrastructure. It becomes a landmark shaped by transport and craftsmanship at the same time. So a traveler sees a route, and a viewer sees a stonework of art. The landmark ends in the curve of the last arch. A tomb once stood taller than every building around it in Luanda. Luanda is Angola's capital, and capitals grow in layers. Some blocks fill with low roofs before taller construction arrives. At the time of its construction, nearby buildings were shorter, so the tomb sat above the skyline simply because nothing else had risen higher. That made a burial structure into a landmark. People moving through the streets would read the city by that high stone shape. In a city, height is a map of what has been built and what has been left standing. In Luanda, the tomb marked that line against the low roofs. If you like stories where terrain and infrastructure explain the surprise, keep watching and subscribe for more map-minded facts. And tell us which location changed your view of the map the most.